Hi everyone! Today we're going to be having a look at some of the configuration options that you have when creating an InfoCapture project. So what I'm going to do is show you this t-shirt order form that I created earlier. So if we scroll down and click on View Form, you'll be able to see what sections and fields are within this form. So this is the whole form, so it's very short. So there's two sections. Just looking at the first one, we've got the name field. So this is disabled and it's going to pull in the user's name from their profile. The user can then select male or female. They can select the t-shirt size and the t-shirt colour. And then this t-shirt code field down here, this will generate a code based on gender, size and t-shirt colour. And the next section is just for customizations. So the user can pick any of these options, so none, front only, back only, or front and back. And then they can specify the customizations that they want. So it might be that they want to put their name on the front of the t-shirt, and then they can select the colour for the text as well. So that is the whole form. And what we're going to be looking at today is things like project permissions, which is going to control who can access the form, who can update things, who can change the status. We're going to look at field condition sets, which is essentially rules for this form. And then we're going to look at how we can use those rules to define field permissions. We're also going to have a look at statuses and setting up the project workflow. We're going to have a look at dynamic field changes. And finally, we'll be having a look at notifications. So let's get started. So let's have a look at project permissions. So from the project properties page, over on the right hand side, just click on project permissions. So there's really two parts to setting this up. We need to create some project roles, which should be made up of users who should have the same level of rights across a particular project. And then we've got the rights section down here where we can actually define exactly what rights each role should have. So we'll start by creating a new project role. Now, in this case, I'm going to call this project role admin. So I always start with an admin role, and I think it's a really good idea because if you need to troubleshoot any issues on this project, or perhaps somebody has inadvertently changed the status, an admin would have full access to everything and they could go back and fix that. So I always think it's a good idea to start with an admin role. So I'll save that, and then I just need to define who sits in this role. So in this kind of permissions area here, this is where you can pick individual users, you can pick system roles and system groups. So you can start typing. So if I was looking for a specific user, I can just start typing in their name. If I was looking for a group, I could just put G and that will pop up with all of the groups on the system. And similarly with roles, I can put R and that will pop up with my roles on the system. So in this case, I'm going to select this system role, which is called administrators. And then I'm just going to click apply permissions. So that's our first project role created. So let's set up a few more. So for this t-shirt order form, I want to have a role for managers, and they're going to be the people that need to approve any customizations. So I'm just going to call it managers. Okay, and then from here I've got a manager's role set up, so I'll select that and click apply permissions. I'm also going to have a project role for marketing, and this time I've got a group set up for marketing, so I can either put kind of the G prefix in there and then find the marketing group, or I could start typing marketing and it will pop up here. And then finally, I want another project role for staff. So this is going to be all of the people who should be able to kind of submit new t-shirt order forms. So I'm going to call this staff and click save. And then in here, I don't want to select a specific group or role, I just want everybody on the system to have access to submit new forms. So here I can select all registered. Okay, so we've created our project roles and we've put the right people into them. So now if we scroll down to look at this rights section, we can see at the top here we've got a column for each of the project roles that we've set up, and we've also got a column for the reporter and for the handler. So the reporter is the user that has submitted the form, and the handler would be the person that it's assigned to. Now in this particular case we're not going to be using assigning for the t-shirt order form, so we don't need to worry about this one. But I'll show you what they're there for. So let's just have a quick look at the level of rights that you can give to each selection of users. So we've got view issues. So that's if you tick that for admin, for example, that would mean that admin can view all of the forms that are submitted by all users. You've got update issues. That means that once a form's been submitted, you can go in and edit it. You've got report issues, so that's the ability to actually submit new forms. Handle issues. Now this would mean that anybody belonging to the admin project role would be able to have a form assigned to them. Now like I mentioned, in this case we're not using assigning, so it's not really applicable in this case. If we tick it, it doesn't matter, but it won't actually do anything. We've got the ability to update the issue status, so progress it through the workflow. We've got the ability to assign issues. Again, we're not using assigning, so if we tick it, it doesn't matter, but it's not relevant in this case. We've got viewing and adding notes. So there'll be a little notes tab within the form once it's been submitted, and this gives you the ability to view any notes that are added and also add notes yourself. And then similarly we'll have a files tab, and this would give you the ability to attach files and to view them as well. We've got viewing the history. So this would be any changes that are made to the form at all, that would be logged in a history tab. We've got manage issues rights, so that's the ability to delete issues and delete attached files and notes. And then finally we've got viewing the reports page. So you can see here we've given admin full rights. So of course you can tick the select all box at the top, and that would just tick everything. Okay, so we've given admin full rights, and now let's move on to managers. So we want to say that managers can view everything, they can update things, they can even submit new forms themselves. Again, we don't worry about handle issues or assign issues in this case, but we can give them the ability to update the issue status. We'll give them the ability to view and attach notes and files, and we'll give them the ability to view the history. So they've almost got the same level of rights as admins, but they just don't have the manage issues rights or the viewing the reports page rights. Now for marketing, we actually want to give them the same level of rights as managers. So just looking at it at this stage, it would seem like perhaps the people in the marketing group and the people in the manager's role have the same level of rights, so they could just sit in one project role together. However, we're going to be using them separately, because when it comes to looking at notifications, we want to send different notifications to managers than we do to marketing. And then finally we've got staff. So if we were to tick view issues for the staff project role, that would mean that everybody on the system, because we've selected all registered in there, everyone on the system would be able to view forms submitted by anybody else. Now in lots of cases you might not want that. You might want it to be that they can only view the forms that they have submitted. So this is where the reporter column comes into play. So I'm going to untick view issues rights from there, and instead all I'm going to give the staff project role is report issues rights. So just looking at this as it is now, this would mean that staff can submit forms. Now, if we come over to the reporter column, if we tick view issue rights there, this setup then means that staff can view the forms they've submitted themselves. So we've given the staff project role permissions to add new forms, and then if they're the reporter of that issue, then they can view it. So that's when you would use the reporter column. So we could also say that they can edit a form once it's been submitted if we want to, and let's also say that they can view and add notes and files as well. Okay. Now it's very similar with the handler column. So if you're using assigning for your project, it might be that you would give marketing the ability to handle issues, which would mean they could have things assigned to them. And then you could say only if they're the handler can they view those issues. So these columns are really handy. So we've set up the rights there. Now just to show you what we've got at the bottom here as well, we've got private notes. So private notes are great for a project such as a help desk, so maybe support tickets. So if, for example, you've got a support tickets project and you've got either customers or kind of other internal employees who can submit tickets, you might want the support team or the admins to be able to discuss things internally on the Notes tab without the customer or the end user being able to see them. So if we enable private notes, you'll see that we get this kind of extra level of rights here. So in this case, we could say, okay, admin and managers can add private notes, but the person who submitted it, so the reporter and the marketing project role, don't have the ability to see those notes. So in this case, we don't really want private notes enabled, so we'll disable it here. If it is enabled, you can choose to default the notes to private notes. Okay, so we're just going to click Save. So that's our project permissions set up. Let's now have a look at statuses for the t-shirt order form. So from the project properties page, we'll click on Manage Statuses. And here we can see a list of statuses that I've already set up. So let's walk through these. So firstly, we've got requested, and we can see in the description that I've just put t-shirt has been requested. We've got a similar one below, but this one's requested and pending management approval. And you can see from the description that I've put t-shirt's been requested and is pending approval from management due to customizations. So the idea for this t-shirt order form is that if somebody has submitted a form and not requested any customizations, then the marketing role can order that up straight away. However, if customizations have been requested, then the idea is that then they would need approval from somebody in the management role. So we've got two kind of requested statuses at the top here. And then we've got approved and rejected. So these ones are applicable if they've been pending approval from management. And then we've got ordered and delivered. So if you want to create a new status, you just click on Add New Status at the top. You can put the title in there. So for example, if we were creating the approved status, it will auto-generate the unique code for you. You can pick a colour. So the colours will be displayed in the front end on the list of issues. So depending on the status, it will show a different colour. So it's just a way of colour coding according to status. We can put the description in there, and we can also choose to archive old issues. So if we have a look at this rejected status, for example, so if we edit that one, we can see that we've set up archiving here. So once the status has been moved to rejected, those forms would be archived after 10 days. So once something's been archived, it won't show in the list of issues by default, but you can absolutely still access them. They're not deleted from the system or anything like that. So we've set up our statuses here. Now what we want to do is have a look at project workflow. So project workflow is a way of restricting who's allowed to change the status at what time, and also what they're allowed to change it to. So if you've got quite a complex workflow, you might have lots and lots of statuses. You might have 10, 20, 30, 40 statuses. And typically, you wouldn't want a user to have the option to change to any status at any time. It's more likely to go through kind of a linear workflow. So in this case, we don't want a form to jump straight from requested to delivered. We want it to follow the workflow. Now we're going to have a look at setting up the project workflow. So back on the project properties page, over on the right hand side, we'll select project workflow. So project workflow is most commonly used for statuses. So as we looked at earlier, what we want to do is restrict which statuses each user is allowed to select at what point in the life cycle of the issue. Project workflow can also be used for other select fields. So all of the select fields in this form are shown here. So you can restrict the options that are displayed in a select field based on a condition. In this case, we're just going to select status and click add rule for this field. So what we're going to do is actually add a series of project workflow rules for each of our statuses. So we're going to start by selecting status equals requested. So you can see here we've got a list of the field condition sets, and these ones have already been set up for us, but we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail later on. So I'm going to select status equals requested. Now, what we see along here is kind of a column and a box for each of our project roles, and then also for reporter and handler. So just to note, down here, this section is if you want to set up kind of group approval of changing a status. In this case, we're just concerned about individually what people can change the status to, so we're not going to worry about this bit down here for the time being. What we need to do is think about who should be allowed to change the status and what they should be allowed to change it to when the current status equals requested. So we've got an admin role set up with the idea being that they could come and troubleshoot issues. If somebody's accidentally changed the status to the wrong thing, an admin could come and sort that out for them. So I'm going to untick admin and say that admin can change it to anything. So when the status equals requested, an admin, so a member of the administrator's role, would be able to change the status to anything else. I'm going to leave managers as it is, because when the status just equals requested, that means that there was no customizations added. So when we come to setting up a rule for requested pending management approval, that's where we would kind of define the this for managers. So I'm going to leave managers as it is, but I'm going to save that for marketing, when something is requested, they can then move it along to ordered. Okay, so the only two options is they can leave it on requested or they can move it to ordered. So these three status, these are all only applicable if customizations have been added. And I'm going to leave staff as undefined, which means they can't change the status at all. Okay, and then I'm just going to click add rule. So that's our first rule set up. So when the status equals requested, admin can change it to anything, marketing can leave it on requested or they can change it to ordered. And then what we want to do is set up these rules for each of our statuses. So I'm clicking add rule again and I'm going to select the next status. So again, I'm going to say that admin can change it to anything, and this time I'm going to say that managers, they can obviously leave it where it is, which is on requested pending management approval, or they can change it to approved or rejected. Okay, now while it's on this status, marketing shouldn't be able to do anything, and staff won't be allowed to change the status either. Okay, so I'm just going through and setting up for each of our statuses what each project role should be allowed to change it to. So again, I'm going to say admin can change it to anything when the status equals approved. I'm going to say that managers can't do anything because because it's now been approved, it would sit back with marketing. So in this case, I'm going to untick marketing and say that it could be left unapproved, or they could move it along to ordered. And again, staff can't do anything. So actually, I'm leaving staff undefined for all of these rules because staff, which would be the person that submitted it, won't be allowed to change the status at all. Okay, so the next one will be when the status equals rejected. Again, admin can change it to anything. And marketing, I'm unticking marketing, but I'm just selecting rejected. So there isn't anywhere else to go. So what I'm doing here is saying all they can do is leave it on rejected. Okay. And then the next one would be ordered. So again, admin can change it to anything. Marketing can leave it on ordered until the point where it's been delivered, and then they can change the status to delivered. Okay, and then finally we need to set up the rule for when it's been delivered. Again, admin can change it to anything. Marketing can just leave it on delivered. Okay. So that's all of our project workflow rules defined. So just to recap again, this is setting up who's allowed to change the status at what time and what they're allowed to change it to. So we can see here the only time that managers will be able to change the status is when it's pending their approval. And in that case, they can change it to, they can leave it on requested, or they can change it to approved or rejected. And then marketing essentially take over from there, and then they can move it through the workflow until it reaches the delivered status. What we're going to do now is have a look at dynamic field changes. So dynamic field changes are a way of automatically setting a field value based on a condition. So in this case, we want to automatically set the status to requested pending management approval if customizations have been requested. So we'll start just by having a quick reminder of the statuses here. So we can see that we've got two requested statuses. So the status that sits right at the top, this will be what the issue lands on as soon as it's been submitted. So at the moment, regardless of whether or not customizations have been added, the issue will sit on requested. What we want to set up is that if customizations have been added, then we want to automatically set the status to this second one so that it's pending management approval. So in order to do that, we're going to use dynamic field changes. But what we need to do first is set up a field condition set, which is essentially a rule, which will kind of define an option that's been selected from the customized field. So let's go back to the project properties page and have a look at field condition sets. So just before we start creating them, let's have a look at what we've got here already. So just looking at these two at the top, default always and default reported. These field condition sets will be automatically created on any InfoCapture project, so they will always exist. Whilst you can edit them by clicking on them, it is highly recommended that you don't, because you'll find these condition sets really handy as you're kind of setting up other areas of the project. So it's great if they're always left as they are. So default always just means all the time. So basically, if none of your other rules are true, default always is true. Default being reported is kind of the state that the issue is in whilst it's being submitted and before it's kind of been saved. So that's just when it's being reported. And then you've got these status ones. So you can see that these are all of the statuses that we've set up for this t-shirt order form. So these are auto-created as you're creating your statuses. And they're really handy as well. They're great for things like triggering notifications and setting up various other things. So it's great if you leave them as they are as well. So again, whilst you can edit it, it's recommended that you don't. So these are rules. So think of field condition sets as rules. Now, on their own, these rules don't do anything, but you can start using the rules in other areas. So they can be used for field rights, which is showing and hiding fields, so field permissions. They can be used for project workflow, which is about kind of restricting which options are available in a select field based on a condition. And you can also use them for SLAs, so service level agreements. What we're actually going to be doing is setting one up that we can use for a dynamic field change. Now, whilst that's not listed here, what we can do when we're creating the condition set is have it automatically create a trigger, and we can use the trigger for the dynamic field change. So let's have a look at setting up this condition set. So I'm going to click Add New Condition Set. And the very first thing that you need to do is give the condition set a name. So the name itself, it in terms of functioning, it doesn't matter what the name is, but it is a good idea for it to be something that's really recognizable to you, which describes what the condition is. Because when you come to use these condition sets in other places, you will select the field condition set from a drop down list of all of your condition sets. So it's really great if you can easily pick out the condition that you need to use. So in this case, I'm going to say that if customization equals anything, so I'm going to give it a name of customize equals any, because just to remember what our objective is here, we want to say that if any customizations have been requested, then it needs to go to management for approval. So then we come on to these checkboxes. So this is where we can use the condition set. So we've got, like we just mentioned earlier, we've got fields rights, workflow, and SLAs. So in this case, we're not actually going to be using this in any of these three areas. What we're going to do is create a trigger from this field condition set. So first of all, let's scroll down and find the field on the form that we want to put a rule against. So you can see you've got all of your fields within your form listed here, but the only one we're looking for is customize. Okay, so if we tick customize, and in this case, we want to say that if it is any customizations. So I'm going to select all three of those options. So this rule will mean if customize equals front only, back only, or front and back. Okay, and now we're going to scroll down, and just before we click save, I want to point this one out. So this is if you want to automatically create a trigger for this condition, and creating that trigger will mean that we can use it for dynamic field changes. So in a moment I'll explain the difference between conditions and triggers, but let's click save for the time being. Okay, so we've set up our field condition set, which is if customize equals any of these options, front only, back only, or front and back. Now, like I mentioned previously, on its own, this rule is not doing anything. Nothing will appear differently in the front end, because for the time being, we haven't used this rule anywhere. So let's go and have a look at the trigger that this has created. So over on the right hand side, let's click on triggers. Okay. Now we can see that this has been automatically created. It's been given the same name as our condition set, and what we can see here is that condition set match in the new issue state. So the new issue state is after something's been saved. So whether you've now submitted it or whether you've edited it, it's now in a new issue state. So the condition set, customize equals any, is kind of true in the new issue state. And then we've got another one where if this condition set, which is customize equals any, did not match in the previous issue state. So what that means is so just thinking in terms of submitting a new form, so because nothing had been saved yet, in the previous issue state, this wasn't true, customize equals any. But in the new issue state, customize equals any is true. Okay? So this is the trigger's already been created for us, so we don't need to do anything here. I just wanted to point out what that looks like. So now, if we go along to dynamic field changes, okay, so this is where you would find a list of any dynamic field changes that you've already set up. So there's nothing in here at the moment. Now, from this field here, we can select any of the fields within our form, and we can also select status at the top, which is the one that we'll be using today. Okay, so let's pick status and click add rule for this field. So what we see here is we can pick the trigger to use. So this will show a list of all of your triggers. So at the moment we've only got the one, so that's the only thing that's displaying. But again, just going back to naming your condition sets and your triggers, it's great if they can really represent what the rule is so that you can easily identify it. And then you can pick the new value of the status field. So I'm going to say if this trigger is true, if customize equals any, then automatically set the status to requested pending management approval and click add rule. Okay, so we now see that for this status field, if this trigger is true, then set the status to requested pending management approval. Now, if we didn't have that, the new form that's been submitted would automatically set to the status of requested, simply because that's the first one in the list. But because there's customizations on it, we want it to go to pending management approval. Let's now have a look at field permissions. So this is how you can show and hide fields based on rules that you've set up. Let's start by having a quick look at the form again. And the area we're going to be focusing on is the customization section. So as it currently stands, regardless of which option is chosen here, all four of these fields are going to be displayed. Now that doesn't make a lot of sense in this case. So if customize equals none, that means that the user doesn't want to add any customizations, which means that the fields here, front and back text and the colours, are irrelevant. So what we'd like to do is hide those fields if none is selected. And then what we want to do is if front only is selected, then we'll just show these two fields at the top, front text and front text colour. If back only is selected, then we'll just want to show the back text and back text colour. And if front and back is selected, then we'll want to display all of them. So the first thing that we need to do is go and create some field condition sets for each of these options. So let's jump back to the project properties page and go and select field conditions on the right hand side. So this is showing us a list of the current field condition sets which exist. Let's scroll down and click add new condition set. So first of all, we need to give our condition set a name. So we need to create three condition sets, one for if customize equals front only, one if customize equals back only, and one if customize equals front and back. So let's start with customize equals front only. Okay, and then we're going to define where we're going to use this condition set. So in this case, we're going to be using it for field permissions. Now let's scroll down and find that customize field, and we're going to tick that there. And we're going to say front only. So we're selecting front only here, so this condition will mean if customize equals front only. And then just scroll down and click save at the bottom. And then we need to set up two very similar rules. So it's still going to be around this customize field, but we now need to create them for back only and for front and back. So rather than creating a new one from scratch, I'm going to go into this one, change the name of it. This one will be back only. Change the option selected here. And this time I'm going to click add copy of rule. Now it's really important that you click add copy rather than save, otherwise you'll just be editing the existing one. So that's our second one created. Let's now edit this one and we'll save it as a copy for front and back. Okay, so we're just scrolling down, changing the option in the customize field and clicking add copy of rule. So that's our three condition sets created. So now what we'll do is we'll dive into field permissions where we can have a look at how we go about using these rules. So let's click field permissions over on the right hand side. Now the first thing that we need to do is group together the front customization fields and then in a separate group the back customization fields, and that will allow us to put rules on those fields. So let's click on Manage Groups. So we can see that at the moment all of the fields within the form are sitting in this unassigned group. So that's fine if you're not having any field permissions set up for the form, but in this case we want to set up two groups, one to house the front text and front text colour fields, and one to house the back text and back text colour fields. So we'll click Add New Group. I'm going to call this one Front Customizations and click Add, and then I'm going to add another one which is for Back Customizations. Okay, and then what we need to do is move the relevant fields into the groups. So I'm going to tick Front Text and Front Text Color and move them into the Front Customizations group. And then I'm going to tick Back Text and Back Text Color and move them to the Back Customizations group. Okay, and then I'm just going to save those changes. So now, going back to the Fields Permissions page, we can see those two groups that we've just created, and if you expand on the name of it here, it will just show you which fields belong to that group. So for a much more complex form, you might have 100 or 200 or 300 fields in there, and it might be that 30 of those fields should all have the same rules on them, which means you can group those fields together. So this is just a great way of putting the same rules on multiple fields. So what we want to do is add rules to these groups just to define when they should be displayed and when they should be hidden. So I'm going to start by clicking Add Condition Set. So this is where we can come and pick the rule. So this shows us all the condition sets. I'm going to start with Default Always. So this is a condition set that is available by default, and this just means all the time until another rule overrides it. Okay, so that's the first one that I'm going to add. Now what you'll see along here is a column for each of your project roles. So we've got staff, marketing, managers and admin. And in addition to that we've got reporter and handler. So what we do is we can define whether or not each project role should have view rights and edit rights. So it could be in some scenarios that some people have permissions to view the field, but they don't have permissions to edit it. In this case, we're setting up something that's quite simple. This is a really typical scenario. So we're going to say, by default, deny view and edit rights for everybody. So I'm just going along there and changing all these drop downs to deny. Now you'll notice that I've left reporter of issue and handler of issue as default. So it would be fine in this case to change them to deny as well. but you don't have to. It's just a bit redundant. So because the reporter of the issue will be somebody that belongs to one of these project roles. In this case, it's likely to be somebody in the staff role. And we've already defined the rights here. We don't need to do it again for the reporter. So you can if you want to, but it doesn't matter if you do or you don't in this case. So I just tend to leave them at default. And that's the same for the handler. 9 times out of 10, you wouldn't really need to put anything in reporter or handler. We would just leave it at default. A time when you might want to use it is if, for example, the only person who should be able to view and or edit a field is one of these people. So if only the reporter should be able to see a certain field, you would just give them the rights there. So it would be under quite a specific scenario that you would want to utilize these ones. So as it stands here, if we were to save this, it would mean that these fields in the front customizations group would be hidden all the time. So they wouldn't be visible at all. So what we need to do now is add an overriding rule to say, if this condition is true, then reveal these fields. So I'm going to add another condition set, and this time I'm going to select one of the conditions that we've just created. So I'm going to select customize equals front only and click add. Now this time we're going to select allow. So we're allowing view and edit rights for all of these project roles. Okay. Now what this would mean is that by default, when you first go to submit the form, the fields will be hidden. If you change the customize field to front only, the fields here, front text and front text color, will then be shown and will be editable. Now there's another condition we need to select because one of the other options in the customize field is front and back. And of course, if that one's selected, we should also see these fields. So I'm going to add another condition set and select customize equals front and back. And again, I'm going to say if that condition is true, allow view and edit rights to all the project roles. Okay, and then I'm going to save that. Now, what I would say at this point is that it might be that you've got quite a different setup to this. So this is something that's very typical, but in some cases you might say that, for example, only the managers can see the fields belonging to the front customizations group. So what you would do in that case is you can deny view and edit rights to everybody else and just leave the manager's project role, and perhaps you'd include admin as well, as having view and edit rights. So you can really, this is so configurable, you can decide, at such a low level exactly who should be able to see and edit which fields. So in this case, I'm just going to leave these at allow. So it's just a very simple kind of show and hide setup. Now what we need to do is put some rules on the back customizations. So of course we could do it in exactly the same way. So we could add condition set, choose default always, and then put all these rights along there, and then add the overriding conditions. But what would be much faster is to just copy the rules from this group and then just modify the conditions that we're using. So I'm going to expand on the group name here, and I'm going to say copy rights from the group front customizations and click copy. So now we've got the identical rules on the back customizations field, and in this case all we need to do is just change this one condition, because we still want the default always one to deny it, and we still want these fields to be visible and editable if customize equals front and back. The only one we need to change is this middle one, and we're going to change that to back only. And then we're going to click save again. So now we've set up those field permissions, so the front and back customizations fields will now only be displayed depending on which option has been selected in the customize field. So what we're going to do now is have a look at this t-shirt order form in the front end. So this is what we would see if we were submitting a brand new form. So let's go ahead and fill this out. So we can see that the name of the user that I've logged in as, Connor Chapman, is pulled into this field and I can't overwrite that information. So I'm going to select gender, the size of the t-shirt that I'd like, and the t-shirt colour. And then we can see down here that it's generated a t-shirt code, and that's something that's based on gender, size and colour, and that's something that's set up in the form itself. And now if we come down here to the customization section, this now looks a little different than what we saw in the admin area. And that's because we've added field permissions to the other fields in this section, so that they're only shown based on what you pick here. So by default, none is selected, which means we don't see those other fields. If we were to change this to front only, you'll now see that we just see the front text and front text colour fields. If we select back only, it will hide those front text fields and it will show us the back ones instead. And then finally, if we select front and back, it will show us both sets of those fields. So those are the field permissions that we've set up, so showing and hiding the fields based on a condition, and the condition in this case is which option we've picked from this field. So I'm going to submit one form with customizations and one form without. So let's start with submitting a form with no customizations needed. So I'm going to change that to none. All of those fields got hidden. So all I'm going to do is hit submit. Okay, so now if we scroll down we can see the information that we've submitted, and at the top we can see that the current status is requested. Okay, now according to the statuses and the workflow that we set up earlier, this would now need to go to the marketing team, who could then come and change the status of this to ordered. So let's log in as somebody from the marketing team. So I'm going to log out of here. And in fact, what I'll do first is I'll copy this URL so that I can come straight back to the form. So I'm going to log out and log in as somebody from the marketing team. So let's log in as Jennifer. Okay, and this brings us to the home page, and let's just jump right into that form here. So I'm now logged in as somebody from the marketing team, so I'll see additional tabs along here. So I've got flowchart as one of them. So I now see that this is currently sitting on requested and I can move it along to ordered. So this is based on the project workflow that we configured earlier to say who's allowed to change the status at what time. So I could now go ahead and change this to ordered. Okay. Now if I go back to the flowchart now, you'll see that my options have changed. So we're currently on ordered and I can move this along to delivered. Okay, and then if we go back to flowchart again, we can see that I don't have any more options to move that along. It's reached the end of the workflow. Now if you remember when we were looking at the statuses in the admin area, there was also a couple more statuses that we haven't seen here, and those ones were requested, pending management approval, approved and rejected. Now the reason they haven't shown as we've been looking at it here is because there was no customizations on the form. So if you recall, we set up a field condition set and a dynamic field change to automatically set the status to requested pending management approval if customizations were added. So let's look at the workflow in that scenario. So let's go ahead and submit another form, but actually we'll do that back under Connor. So again, let's just copy this URL and then we'll log back in as Connor, just so that we're looking properly at the project permissions that we set up. So Connor would be part of the staff project role who's able to come and submit forms. So this brings me back to the first one I submitted. Let's submit another one. Okay, so I can select these options again. And this time I'm going to change customize to front and back. Okay, so I'm going to say on the front of the t-shirt I want it to show my first name, and I want that text to be in white. And I'm going to say on the back I want it to show my job title perhaps, so I'm going to put developer in here. And again, I'd like that in white. Okay, so let's submit this one. And you'll notice that the status has jumped straight to requested pending management approval. So the last one we submitted went to requested, and that's because there was no customizations. In this case, we've requested customizations, so it requires management approval. So let's now log in as a manager and see the statuses that we can move to. So again, I'll just copy this URL so that I can come back to it easily. Log out, and let's log in as a manager. So I'm going to log in as Pippa this time. Okay, and I'm just going to jump directly to that form. Now, if I go and look at the flowchart, as a manager, I can see that I can move this from requested pending management approval to approved or rejected. Okay, so in this case, let's move it along to approved. So now if we go back to the flowchart, we can see that as a manager, there's nowhere else for me to move this to. And that's because it would now sit back with the marketing team to go ahead and process that order. So if we were to log back in as somebody in marketing, so Jennifer, who we were logged in as just a moment ago, we would then be able to process this through the rest of the workflow, so it would then go to ordered and then delivered. The last thing that we're going to have a look at today is notifications. So it's really important within a process that the right people are alerted at the right time. So in this case, if somebody submitted a new order form and there were no notifications set up, nobody would be made aware of the new form that's been submitted, and then obviously it would just slow the whole process down. So let's go ahead and click on notifications on the right hand side. And if we just scroll down a bit to notification templates, you can see that these are some templates that I set up earlier. So we've got things like we've received your t-shirt order request, your t-shirt order request has been rejected, etc. If you click on the little icons here, it just shows you the full body of the notification. So I've already created these, but I'll just show you how you would go about creating a new one or editing an existing one. So to create a new one, you would click on Add New Template. What we'll do in this case is just have a look at editing one of these. So let's edit this one, Issue Reported, and I've indicated in the name here that that would be sent to the reporter. So what we see here is the template that I've created. So you start by giving the template a name. So this is a bit like naming your field condition sets and your triggers. It doesn't matter what the name is in terms of functioning, but it's important that it's something recognizable to you, because when it comes to setting up the notification rules, you would pick the template that you want to send, and you would see a list of these template names. So everyone has their own naming conventions. What I tend to do is put kind of what the trigger is, so I'm saying when a new issue is reported, and then I put who it's going to be sent to. But you can, you might absolutely just call this, new form submitted, or whatever you like. And then you can select the type, so you can either send plain text or HTML. So if we were to swap this to plain text, it would just take away this CK editor box that we're seeing here, which allows us to format it. And then we've got the subject of the notification. So I'll just point out at this stage that all InfoCapture notifications are sent via email. So you'll notice that sometimes the notifications you receive on the system might come through as in-system messages, which would pop up here. InfoCapture notifications are always emails, and that's really because they tend to hold, perhaps a higher importance. So we're going to put the subject of the email in here. Now you'll notice I've just put text in here. You can also use expressions within the subject as well as in the body. So Over here on the right hand side, you can see that we've got some common expressions here. And what this is, say for example, let's put a space in there and then select issue ID. So that will then pull in the ID of the issue into the subject. Okay. You could pull in other things like the name of the reporter, the current status, etc. And then it works very similarly for creating the body of your notification. So you can see here I've used the reporter expression, and then I'm just saying, along the lines of thank you for submitting your t-shirt request. I'm pulling in the issue ID here as well, and I've also created this link. So it's really great if notifications can include a link so that the person receiving it can just click on that link and be taken directly to view the form that's been submitted. So this one is just using this URL of view page. So you would create or edit your template and just click save. Okay, and then they'll all be listed here. So if we have a look at actually triggering these notifications, what we would need to do is add new rules. But before we do that, we need to look at setting up some triggers. So the triggers will be something that is basically like a rule, and when that rule is true, it can trigger these notifications to be sent. So just looking at the ones that we've got here, let's start with this one, the issue reported, which is being sent to the reporter. We need a trigger which defines that an issue has just been submitted. So let's go into triggers. Okay, and I'm going to click on add new trigger. So triggers are very they're similar to field condition sets in the sense that they're rules, but the difference is that triggers can be transitional states. So essentially, if we scroll down here, these are the 4 that you'll be using quite a lot. So what you can do is say that in the previous issue state, so before the change was made, the status was approved. And in the new issue state, so after the change has been made, the status is ordered. So that's just an example of what you can do. So it's defining that not only is the status currently ordered, but previously it was approved. So that's the difference between field condition sets and triggers. Now in this case, we don't want to set up a status trigger. We want to just set up a very simple one for when a new form's been submitted. So I'm just going to call this one new issue reported. I'm going to tick the issue activity box and just select new issue reported. And that's all I need to do for a trigger like that, and click save. Okay, so now if I go back into notifications and then click on add new rule, okay, so the first thing I need to do is select the trigger. So this will list the triggers that you've got. So we're using new issue reported, and then you can select which template you want to send. So we do have a default template as well, and that just pulls in all the information from the form. In this case, we want to use the template issue reported reporter. Okay, so we're going to say when this trigger is true, so when a new issue has been submitted, we're going to send this notification template, and then we can choose who to send it to. So we can choose to send it to any project role. So we've got staff, marketing, managers and admin. In this case, we just want to send it to the reporter, so the person that has submitted the form. You can also choose to send notifications to a specific email address if you want to. So I'm just going to click add rule, and that's our first rule set up. So if we have a look at another one now, so we've got 2 which are set up here for when an issue is reported. We've got one for when there's no customizations, and we can see that I'm going to send that to marketing. And then we've got a template where a new form's been submitted with customizations, and that one would go to managers. So Going back into triggers, this time I'm going to create a new one, and again I'm going to, well, first of all I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to say new issue reported and customizations equals any. Okay, so we've already got a field condition set that's created, which defines when any customizations have been selected. So we set that up earlier so that we could use it within project workflow, but we're also going to use it as part of this trigger. So we're going to say issue activity is new issue reported, and we're going to choose another one as well and say that the condition set customize equals any is true in this new issue state. So in this case, the new issue state is after it's been reported, okay, and this condition will be true. So I'll click save on there, and oh, sorry, I don't think I ticked the box there, so let's just go back into that one. I think I selected the value but didn't tick the box here. So I'm going to tick this box and select customize equals any and save that. There we go, that's better. So then while we're here, we'll create the one where there's no customizations. But in this case, we do need to set up another condition which defines when customizations equals none. So we need to go back to field condition sets. And we can see here we've already got some conditions relating to the customize field. So I'm actually just going to click on any one of these just so that we can save it as a copy rather than creating one from scratch. So let's go for customize equals any. So I'm going to change the name to customize equals none and change the option here. And scroll down. Again, just make sure that you're clicking add copy of rule rather than save. Okay, so we've now got that condition. So going back into triggers now, and we're going to go to add new trigger and say new issue reported and customizations equals none. So again, ticking issue activity, new issue reported, and we're going to say that when this condition set customize equals none is true in the new issue state, which is after it's been submitted, and then we're going to click save. Okay, so we've now created a couple more triggers that we can use for notifications. So if we go back into notifications now, click on add new rule, and this time I'm going to select new issue reported and customizations equals none. So in this case, this would go directly to marketing to get that t-shirt ordered. So I'm going to select the correct notifications template. So here, this one, issue reported without customizations. And I'm going to say, send this to everyone in the marketing project role. Okay, and then I'm going to create quite a similar one, so add new rule again. This time I'm going to select new issue reported and customizations equals any. I'm going to select the correct template, so this time it's going to be issue reported with customizations, and this time I'm going to send it to everyone in the managers project role. Okay, so that's how you would go about creating your notification templates and your notification rules. Obviously there are others that we could set up here. So for example, there's one for updated. So this one is to say that a t-shirt order has been updated, and the most likely thing here is that the status has been changed. And this is going to be sent to marketing. So what we would do here is perhaps set up a trigger if the status is changed to approved or rejected by somebody in the manager's role. That would then send a notification to marketing so that they know they can then go ahead and order it up. So there's lots of different notifications that you can set up from here.